day. It was great to see you, Tony, out at the
I'm out there for you.
Veterans Memorial Cemetery for the service. We did open swimming pools across the city, and now we finally have hot weather to encourage people to be in the swimming pool. Hurricane season does start this weekend, and we have our annual hurricane awareness, joint city, county, and nonprofit presentation on everything that you need to know about hurricanes. I encourage everybody to come down to George R. Brown and take part in that on Saturday. We've got a lot of new Houstonians who might like that information. I have a couple of items I wanted to talk about today. One is that it's not the Super Bowl, but it is a very nifty conference to have. It's Neighborhoods USA, known as the NUSA Conference. Houston is the host city for the 2015 NUSA Conference. This is the nation's largest neighborhood organization, and an estimated 1,000 grassroots leaders from across the country. This is the 40th anniversary of the organization. It's a great opportunity for our own super neighborhood council members and civic club members to get invigorated about the stuff that they're doing in their neighborhoods. Houston's dedication to neighborhoods, the work of our own Department of Neighborhoods, the work that the Planning Department does is why NUSA has chosen to come to Houston for this conference, and we're very excited about that. Also, there you are, right behind me, another Planning Department item. We have finally our official Houston preservation plaques. We approved a number of landmark designations today for historic properties across the city. I have a house with a City of Houston landmark plaque on it. We previously had them, but with our new program and our aggressive outreach to folks to landmark their houses and protect and preserve their houses, these are the official plaques, and we encourage those who have had their properties previously dedicated or designated to come in and get one of these plaques.
Here's just the historic landmark plaque.
What are the Ten Commandments?
Mayor, one more time.
Yeah, man, one more time.
Now, pretty soon, it's just historic landmark, because now when you landmark a property, you're a historic property. Anybody have any questions about the NUSA conference or about our new preservation plaques? They can be ordered from the Planning and Development Department. The order forms are found online under the Planning Department. Or you can email houstonpreservation@houstontx.gov. There is a cost for the plaques, and they may be purchased for credit card or check. And it's a great way to show your pride in your neighborhood.
How do you qualify for it?
Well, you have to have listed your property as a historic landmark in
So
the city of Houston.
kind of,
Well, sure, if it's historic. It's not what goes on in the house, it's what goes on around the house. No, we would, after we shut it down and take everybody to jail, maybe the property owner will clean it up and designate the landmark property. Anybody have any questions?
I wanted to ask about hurricane season, with all of the forecasters saying it's going to be an above average, extremely active
I think that's what they said
season.
last year, too.
And it was, although it didn't come our way, but there's always the chance that it could, and so I'm just wanting to know if you know, what Houston is doing to prepare.
It doesn't matter what the forecasters say about whether it's going to be a busy hurricane season or not a busy hurricane season. We do exactly the same thing every year. We cooperate and coordinate among all the government entities. We sit down and map out any changes in what's happened across the city. We go over our evacuation plans, we look at making sure that our disaster recovery plans are in place, there's clear lines of communication. From the government side, we know how to handle a hurricane, or any natural disaster for that matter. What is important is that citizens recognize that they have a role to play, and they prepare in just the same way that the government does. You need to know, and you should know today, whether you are in a likely evacuation zone or whether you are in a shelter-in-place zone. Almost the entire city of Houston, if you are legally in the city of Houston, is a shelter-in-place zone. But many areas of Harris County and the far east, southeast side of Houston may be in an evacuation zone. You need to know that. You need to know where you fall in the evacuation hierarchy, and you can find that out. There's a lot of information online. There's several key websites that people can go to. But beyond knowing whether you should shelter in place or evacuate, you need to know where your important documents are and important medicines and anything that you might need in case you had to evacuate after the storm. You also should keep some gas in your car and enough canned goods and water to last you about a week. Finally, if you have to evacuate, and when I talk about the evacuation plan, if you're in an evacuation zone, we will order you to evacuate. We will tell you neighborhood by neighborhood, street by street, zip code by zip code, whether to evacuate, and we'll tell everybody else to stay home and shelter in place. People who shelter in place may want to leave after the storm goes through, and you're still going to need the same evacuation kits, medicines, important documents, but most importantly, anyone who evacuates needs to have a plan about where you're going to go and how to contact family members after you have evacuated. Prepare to take your pets and know what you're going to do with your pets. Often after a major storm, communication on cell phones is spotty. So if you already know where you're going and everybody can gather in the same place from your family, it makes it a whole lot easier. But that's not something that the government can do. That's something that individuals have to prepare for.
Megan,
Obviously, sorry, just one follow-up. Obviously, in the event of a hurricane coming to our area, you'll be on duty, but are you hurricane ready at your house?
I am hurricane ready at my house. Yes. Have the batteries, have the hand crank radio, have canned goods. I don't know whether there's any gas in the car because I don't drive the car anymore, but I'll make sure that gets taken care of.
Mayor, last time we were in session here, Councilmember Bradford brought up the increase in gang members and going into the summer season. How has the city developed a plan to protect those in the communities and neighborhoods since it's such a young population coming out of high school with the gang activity?
I'm not aware that there's been any increase in gang activity, nor am I aware that there's any increase in gang activity that goes on over the summer. What happens in the summer is that you have a lot more kids who are unsupervised. The fact that they are unsupervised means that, yes, they could in fact get connected to gangs, but more importantly, it means that a lot of kids get into what we used to call mischief, all the way up to violent crimes. Kids do stupid things when nobody's watching. And we have to do things from a law enforcement perspective. We have to do things as neighbors and citizens and family members as well. Kids need productive activities. Enroll your kids in summer programs, in church camps. Ask neighbors to watch out for kids if you're not going to be at home. And law enforcement, we change what we do. I mean, a lot of times during the school year, it's about looking for truants. Well, they're not truant when they're out in the summer, so law enforcement watches to see where kids are and what they appear to be doing. It's a different type of patrolling, but we all have a responsibility to make sure we get through the summer safely.
Is there any new update on the amusement park that's supposed to be coming to the Harris County Houston area?
I am not aware of any amusement park that's supposed to be coming to the Houston area. There's something way out in far north Harris County, and that's outside of my jurisdiction, so I'm not up on it.
Budget question. The 5-year forecast was laid out yesterday, projecting growing operating deficits in the coming years.
Really?
How do you foresee the city responding?
If you
to
go
that?
back and you pull the 5-year forecasts from the last, certainly the last 5 years, but for several years prior to my being mayor, you'll see that same thing. It's just a forecast. It's a target. We want council members to be aware that decisions they make today have impacts in the future. We estimate fairly conservatively on the budget, and we want everybody to know that we think that we are not using, and there's been some misinformation about that, we are not using one-time revenues for recurring expenses. We had to do that during the downturn. We are no longer doing that. However, we are service organizations. We have increasing costs as a city, as do all cities, for health benefits and pension expenses, and those costs put upward pressure on our budgets. The pension and health care costs, salary increase costs, mean that either the revenue has to come in higher or we have to continue to change the way we do business to bring ourselves back into alignment. We don't project into the future to show that we have a balanced budget. That's what we do annually when we put our budget together. We project into the future to show what the stress points are.
But are the stress points significant enough that you're going to be dealing with those? I mean, when you're saying that it looked like that
I don't know how
5 years
much more
ago.
plainly I can say this. The stress points on our budget are health benefits and pension benefits.
Yeah.
And we have been dealing with health benefits and pension benefits since I've been here. We went through a painful process to ramp down the increase in our health benefits, and in the presentation by Mr. Dow, you saw how we did cost avoidance, but it's going back up again. Earlier this year, we cut our benefits, and we're paying more from the city side. Our beneficiaries are paying more, but the costs are going up. We are projecting a 10% per annum rise. Each year, council has the opportunity to make budgetary decisions that impact that health benefits cost. And each year, council has the opportunity to make decisions, to the extent that we can, on pensions. But pensions is something that are not entirely within our control. Salary, health benefits, and pensions are the big cost drivers in the budget.
Is the hope that the revenue will continue to outrun the growing costs?
No, well, we are required to have a balanced budget. Every year we have a balanced budget. I've been very frank with the public in that when I first came into office, when we balanced the budget, we didn't balance it pretty. We balanced the budget by using one-time sources of revenue, and we balanced the budget by dipping into our rainy day fund. We have completely repaid the rainy day fund. I have $20 million in cash sitting there. We are above our 7.5% optimal reserve of income over expenses. There's no reason to keep an amount above that, but we still have to work on what are the big cost drivers in what we do. We operate with fewer people, or we rein in health benefits and pension costs. I have presented a balanced budget to council, and I'm happy with the budget I have presented. I know that this is now an opportunity for council members to put their priorities and their stamp on the budget, but anything they do that costs money, they have to take it from someplace else because it is a balanced budget.
Mayor, is your budget director going to be doing cost analysis on the effects of the Affordable Care Program when it takes effect?
We are not. There's still one of the reasons that we don't try to get too specific on the out years on our budget is that there are a lot of different variables and a lot of estimates. It's sort of a guide. It's not a prediction. And so we recognize, as I said, that healthcare costs, pension costs, and salary costs are the big drivers for everything we do. Healthcare is a concern, the impact of the Affordable Care Act is a concern. However, we already provide fairly robust benefits to not just our employees, but their dependents and their retirees. We have already made the transition and cover our dependents up to age 26, which is in the Affordable Care Act. So we think we've already taken the steps we need to we don't anticipate any major changes for the city.
Just following up, yesterday in his press release, Mr. Costello mentioned a relatively large difference between the comptroller's deficit projection and finances. I understand that there are reasons for that, but if you just comment on just explaining why that's so big.
I spent 20 years in the private sector doing project economics, and very, very small changes in what you think a rate of increase might be have huge changes on the outcome, and the farther out you go, the bigger the changes. We look at hundreds of revenue streams. The controller looks at hundreds of revenue streams. You put a projected increase on every one of those revenue streams, and you add them all up. Minute changes across all those revenue streams can make big differences in projections. Our goal is to try to hit what I would call the most likely, or the midpoint projection. We are not particularly optimistic or aggressive, and you will find that we have come in under revenue with each year, even when I had to drive down and we really had to cut spending. The controller, and it's just by virtue of the way they approach budgeting, they tend to look toward what I would call the most conservative. If you have a midpoint upside downside, they try to get between the downside and the midpoint, and we try to hit the midpoint. So it's just a different budgeting philosophy.
Thank you very much.
Mike's got one last one.
Any thoughts on what Councilmember Davis was talking about in the effort to bring down the cost of maintaining the overgrown lots?
He's not trying to bring down the cost of maintaining the lots. What he's trying to do is create job opportunities for youth. And when we did our last appropriation for mowing of weedy lots, we left a provision in place so that we could contract with nonprofits or organizations that want to do a summer jobs program. However, we have to have a contractor who is willing to recruit the kids and put the equipment in their hands and put them into place. We've worked in the past with Keep Houston Beautiful, which has the mowers and so forth, but the way it has to work, it's not a show up when you want to and cut lawns in your neighborhood. This is, we need these lots cut, and you pay for it, but you have to show up and you have to do the work, and so we have to have a responsible contractor. And whether that contractor is Houston Beautiful or Church X, Y, and Z, they have to be willing to meet some performance standards. So we're looking forward to it, but that really is only a small number of summer jobs. We've had robust summer job programs in the past, but they were always federally funded, so this is an attempt to try to take local dollars that we would spend anyway and provide some opportunities for young people to get a little bit of job experience. But, mowing lots is hot, dirty, heavy work, and you got to have the kids who want to do it.
Mayor, is the Hilton still on sale?
Hank, you gotta go, I'm sorry.
As far as I know, the Hilton's still for sale, but I haven't heard anything recently about that.
Thanks,